Well, thank you so much for that very kind introduction, and thank you, a huge thank you to everybody from Accenture for hosting us in this beautiful location and for bringing the community together at a time where there is regime change and we're facing new realities. And I think it's a period that more than ever, groups like AABDC and working together, the alliances that we have in the financial community with Morgan Stanley, Bank of America here, Accenture, and the tech sector are more important than ever. So I'll tell you a little bit about my background, but two of the things that we have done at JPMorgan, and we have Vivian Young, who heads our Asia Pacific Islander office here, is that we've done a number of surveys on small business owners and also on Asian wealth management and financial trends that I wanted to share with you to kick off today's program. But my own background and my history with AABDC. So I chair research at JPMorgan, 36 years in the industry, 3 different firms for the last 26 at JPMorgan. But I have been the executive sponsor for our Asian employee network for I think close to 20 years now. Actually, it's kind of dating me, but this is now a group at JPMorgan that has 26,000 employees. Just in North America. And we have a history at JPMorgan of operating in Asia for more than 100 years, 17 different offices. And I spent about 2 weeks this year in January already in our Asia offices at 6 different locations. And they still talk about just the connectivity between the leaders and the opportunities that are apparent and ways in which we can take advantage of all of that. At JPMorgan, we also have an Asia Executive Forum, which is our managing directors, where I'm on the steering committee. And we didn't let a crisis go to waste. During the pandemic, we did create and formally introduce an Asia Pacific Islander office. And Vivian, who had run our employee sponsor network, became the head of that. We had done that together for many years. So it was a way of really trying to institutionalize some of the things that we were working on. But I can say I was in Las Vegas for the first kickoff, before the Asian American Business Roundtable. It was all done for the new year, so Happy New Year's, Happy Year of the Snake. I am a snake. That is getting away my age. But it was a wonderful way to really begin to tell a story about Asian Americans, ranging from corporate professionals to entrepreneurs, and also taking a look at small businesses. And I did want to highlight a few of the achievements of AABDC and really give a special thanks and shout out to John Lang for his vision, because when I have worked with John probably for about 20 years, and it really was the kind of thing when we started these roundtables where it was literally a handful of people. So it's wonderful to actually have a formal board now, which I'm part of, to be talking about an endowment fund, because we do want this sustained for the next generation of leaders. And I think that there's so many organizations that I'm on right now where we need the next generation to really take over and to step in. So let me just highlight a few of the things that AABDC has been doing in the business community, and then I'm going to talk about the JPMorgan business surveys and wealth management surveys that we have conducted. So AABDC actually developed the nation's first development strategy for Asian American small businesses. And they've had an incredibly strong presence in New York City through all the different cycles and crises that the city has gone through. There has been a New York and China Center that was created in 2008. There's also been partnerships, which I think are so important across other affinity groups, working with New York's Black, Asian, Hispanic communities together to support small businesses, and a really deep tradition of working with the Chinatown community as well, particularly after 9/11. So what does the future hold? And let me just start, because I am a researcher, with some statistics on the business community at large, the Asian American business community, and then what our own survey has shown. So if you take a look at the AAPI community, it's 40 different ethnic subgroups. It's the fastest growing demographic, but it's also the most diverse if you look at just the US Census Bureau data. So there's no single data point that can really capture all of the challenges that business owners face. that's one reason why we thought that the surveys of the business community, also of how Asians save and spend, plan for retirement, were so important at JPMorgan. So just to start big picture, Asian Americans own 3 million firms, employ 5.2 million people. The total sales that we're talking about are in the order of 960 billion, but more than 620,000 employer firms. Just if we look at the small businesses, you're looking at an annual payroll that is approaching $200 billion. Now, if we take this to the Fortune 500 companies, though, what we do see is quite a bit of representation, but not at the C-suite. So Asian Americans, if you look at the Fortune 500 companies, make up 27% of the workforce, but they hold only 1.5% of corporate officer positions in Fortune 500 companies. And this was one thing that I have seen since I started in financial services since 1989, was that it's like a pyramid. You start at the entry level and then it sort of peters out. But I remember way back in the day, and this is aging me, I was at Solomon Brothers, and I see some alumni here, from at least one from my era. But I remember that I was one of the first Asian American MDs. The first thing they did was say, you have to go to Jersey City to talk to our tech, because they have no Asian MDs there, and it's all Asian. So, and I remember that was back in 1995. That was the case. And I remember that when I got to JPMorgan Chase, one of the first things they had me do was something called the Asian tax force. And the question was, why are there so few Asian women who are promoted to MD? There were like 3 at the time. And I remember, because I'm a researcher, I had to go through all the forms and everything. And I remember, it's a 2-page form. Why should this person be promoted? You go through this independent review process. I mean, a lot of you probably had the same process. And I remember reading this form, and it was for an Asian woman, and I circled on it 4 times. It was, this person's great, but her lack of presence. This person is such a good worker, but presence could be improved. And I called up the manager, and I said, I know you mean well. I know this is the second year, but you're the problem. You can't say somebody's at the pinnacle of their career and they don't have a presence. I mean, does that mean they don't have a personality? And it really made me focus a lot on some of the Asian women leadership programs at that stage. And some of the things that Vivian and I worked on was that you need to start cultivating a lot of these leadership skills earlier, which is why we worked on something called Vice President Academy. It was about developing your brand. You do analyst associate, you do what you're supposed to do, but there's a point where you need your own brand, you need your own voice. And those were some of the key initiatives that we worked on in our firm that probably have a lot of commonality across the board. But I do want to take you to, so when you break down the numbers as well, and this is some of the McKinsey numbers on women in the workplace, if you look at the 400 largest organizations across the United States, Asian Americans are 9% of senior VPs, but just 5% of the promotions. So one thing that we also have focused on is not just the representation and the absolute number, but what the trajectory has been, given the ratio you have that actually does get promoted and move to the next level. So I want to tell you about the Asian American Business Owner Survey, because this was something where, as a researcher and having an office, the data and to disaggregate it more. So we surveyed over 100 AABI business owners in the U.S. with revenues of up to 20 million, so in the small business community. And first of all, we saw a lot of optimism and opportunity there. 2 in 5 Asian American business owners have seen more than 50% of their business grow over the last 2 years. That was 8 percentage points higher than the previous year. So there is optimism there. It's a wide-ranging distribution, though, of industries and roles and experiences. So you've got this over-representation in the Asian community in manicurists, low-paying jobs, sewing machine operators, and then you have this over-representation also in the tech fields as well, software development, computer programming. And so you have this real variation between the occupations. And that's one thing that we have always looked at, is that you have a much more dispersion and an earnings gap. But the one thing we also found was that you do have a wage gap even in these high wage fields, that even when Asian Americans are in high wage fields, I mean, meaning above $100,000 a year, they still make 93 cents for every dollar that's earned by their white colleagues. And that's correlated with the underrepresentation at the higher levels of promotion as well. So as we want to see more Asian Americans move up the corporate ladder, representation at the entry level, the point is it doesn't necessarily translate to the higher levels. And this is where a lot of my energy has been concentrated at JPMorgan and in the industry at large. Just to share a few thoughts from our investing survey about how Asian Americans save, what they worry about, how they look at retirement as well. So we did a survey in the AAPI community, and what we saw, it was a 2003 survey, was that it was a survey of 18 to 65-year-olds that have a retirement account, and we wanted to understand better how they feel about their retirement plans and what barriers they're facing. And so one thing is, Asians are savers. 65% of those surveyed had more than $80,000 in total account, and if you go to the general public, it's below 50%. So the first thing is Asians are savers. And that is something that I don't think is surprising to people in this room. And if you look at this globally, the highest savings rate in the world is China as well. But what we did see was real dispersion, that Filipinos and Koreans were much less confident. And here they were much more closer to sort of what the overall average was, below 50%. And you had that Asian Indian respondents felt markedly more confident about their savings and their plans. But when we asked how you got your information on how you were planning for your retirement, 30% said they got it from websites and online articles. Another 30% said they got it from their family. And so we you didn't really have as much advice-led assistance as we thought would be beneficial. So we've now had 3 years of an Asian Wealth Summit, which this coming year will actually be in New York City. It's been on the West Coast to really focus on some of the patterns of Asian wealth and how we can actually help make a difference, because we have found that culture matters. There are very important differences in how different cultural groups view their retirement. More education is clearly needed as well. We've tried doing that and also introducing the financial literacy at a much younger age as well. That's been a big initiative at JPMorgan Chase, and also the more personalized advice that has the potential to really build confidence and to give them your toolkit as well. And it is a year where just JPMorgan's views from research on the financial markets. Well, we have 6,500 as our target for the S&P 500. We think there's more upside, but there's also a lot of policy uncertainty that has been generated, and you can already see the hit to sentiment in a lot of the macro indicators that were coming out this week for the first time. You could really see sentiment shift quite markedly. So there's a lot of policy uncertainty to watch as well, but also a lot of opportunity. But just such a pleasure to be with this leadership group where we have so much in common in what we want to achieve in leadership, education, and connectivity. And a huge thank you to John and to AABDC for really bringing this together. And it's not just about the Asian American community. We've been able to work with so many other groups that have the same common goals and the common values. But thank you so much. And I think we have a great set of panels and sessions today planned. So thank you so much. And it's a real pleasure to be here. And a huge thank you to Accenture for their leadership in hosting.